In this video, I am going to discuss Sagada Stills in a Floating World by Marjorie Ivasco. So as you can see, this poem considers poetic experiment. So in this poem, it has a different graphology as well as typography from other poems. So this somehow associates to the title of the poem that truly floats because of its structure and arrangements of words and phrases. On the other hand, the word Sagada is a visually attractive town in the Philippines known for its natural beauty and cultural heritage. So if we go back to the Philippine poetry in English, the native tradition in Philippine poetry, it can be found in a specific form called gnomic verse, and gnome meaning something that is short or small. So these are then poetic lines which are short and compressed. So in this poem, it has short and simple phrases with deeper and substantial meaning. What makes this poem interesting is that it could be read in various ways and could be read by two people. So for example, one speaker will read the phrases or words in the left and the other on the right. So and they will read together what is written in the center of the poem. So first they will read the first speaker will read if with images I mean if with images, and the other will respond if with words. Then going back to the first speaker, I, then the other one will respond you, and they will read together could catch. So the process goes on, and the process goes on as they finish reading the whole poem. Or it could be read, so that's one way of reading the poem, and it could be read as by one speaker. So if with images, I could catch on photographic film a likeness of you in Sagada. I would have to sit 1,000 years with the master of austere, light, masfere, to learn the process of rendering silence. Or, that's another way of reading. Or, if with words, you could catch on silk paper a likeness of me in Sagada. You would have to sit 1,000 years with master of austere, measure shibuku, to learn the process of staining sound. So it could be read as that way. So as we noticed, it is free flowing of meaning and verbs. So although it is not associated with purely verbs, as we can observe here at the center of the poem, but with phrases that could highlight and adds meaning if we put the words together. So even though we read the poem in different direction, it still has its meaning. We can still gather the meaning of the poem. So I already read how it could be read by two people or from a single reader of the poem. So as we can notice, the lines presented at the left part of the poem, it highlights about photography. So from how the poem is written, if with images, so it is already associated with photos or images. So the speaker's contemplation of different modes of expression and the potential limitations and possibilities presented from what is being written at the first line of the poem. Because here it is associated with images, and here on the right side of the poem, it is associated in writing. So it is supported by the preceding lines on photographic film, which is then about photography, and on silk paper, which is really about writing. So, from the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh line, it is about the preservation of the beauty in Sagada. So, it is then interpreted that the beauty of Sagada could be preserved through photography on photographic film and with words on silk paper. And as we go on to the last part of the line, it is then still supported about photography. So these are the supporting lines about photography. I would have to sit 1,000 years with the master of austere. So with here, we can see the context clues or context words that is being used in the poem. So we have here light, which is really about poetry, and Masferi, which is or who is the father of photography in the Philippines, which is who is born in Sagada. Next, on the other hand, or on the parallel line, measure, which is also associated in writing, since writing has its own measurement, and we count lines or anything about measurement in writing. And Shibuku is also a novelist and a poet from Heian period, so it is really about writing. But as I read through this poem, I have noticed that sound here only has a punctuation mark, which is period. So I have a thought in mind that maybe as we read all these lines, we should end at this word because it has the period. But since this is a free flowing poem, it could be just a possibility. So it still depends on the reader on how did they read this, since this Silimanian writer has a great experimentation of this poetry. So now let's talk about the stream of consciousness present in this poem. So in this poem, the stream of consciousness technique is evident. So the stream of consciousness is a literary device that aims to depict the unfiltered flow of thoughts, perceptions, and feelings of a character or a speaker. So it often lacks conventional structure, presenting a continuous stream of thoughts without clear transitions. So since this poem has several interpretations because it could be read in various ways, its stream of consciousness could be more than what I can provide or I will provide here. So in this poem, the stream of consciousness is apparent through the fragmented and spontaneous nature of the speaker's thoughts. So the use of short phrases, incomplete sentences, and the absence of clear punctuation contribute to this effect. So the speaker's thought jump between different ideas, images, and observations, reflecting the unpredictable and associative nature of consciousness. So for example, the comparison, if with images, if with words, suggests the speaker's contemplation of different modes of expression and the potential limitations and possibilities they present. So the subsequent lines, I, you could catch on photographic film, on silk paper, a likeness of you, of me in Sagada. So these lines further illustrate the wandering thoughts and the desire to capture and preserve an image. So that even though we talk about images, it could still be preserved through words on silk paper and also on photographic film. The mention of silence and sound in the midst of the passage indicates the shifting focus of the speaker's attention. So the abrupt interjection reflect the unpredictable nature of the stream of consciousness as the speaker's thoughts move from visual realm to auditory sensations. So, as we can notice here, silence and sound is about auditory sensations, but as the right how the writer wrote this one is that it is primarily about visualization, about the beauty of Sagada, but how she ended the lines here, silence and sound silence and sound is about auditory sensation. So there is a shifting focus of the speaker's attention from visual realm to auditory sensation. So that is a question that I am still on the process of answering. Why did she used silence and sounds? But along with how she structuralizes the lines in the poem before these two words is that it talks about the visualization of the place. So overall, the stream of consciousness in this poem portrays a fragmented and introspective narration that captures the speaker's thoughts and reflections in a spontaneous and unstructured manner. So, moreover, the fragmented structure and lack of clear transitions in the passage reflect the stream of consciousness technique. So, the thoughts and ideas and emerge in a spontaneous and associative matter, mirroring the nonlinear nature of human thought process. So, if we are going to analyze the stream of consciousness here, it is not focused on one thought, but how the readers read and analyze this poem. So the use of repetition, such as the repeated mention of the words you and me, creates a sense of intimacy and connection between the speaker and the other person. Just how I said that this poem could be read by two speakers, just like in a way of a conversation or so. So it enforces the personal and subjective nature of the stream of consciousness as the speaker's thoughts revolve around their relationship and experiences. So overall, the stream, or as a conclusion, or in general, the stream of consciousness in this poem captures the speaker's thoughts as they navigate between different ideas, sensations, and emotions associated with Sagada. So it provides glimpse into the inner workings of the speaker's mind, conveying a sense of spontaneity and the continuous flow of consciousness. So, another fun fact that in the place of Sagada, they have hanging coffins. So this adds to the meaning, or a sort of question, or a sort of reflection of how the culture is present in Sagada and reflected in this poem. So I could also visualize that it has a structure or the formation of hanging coffins in Sagada. So hanging coffins is like a tradition of how the burial ceremony of the people in Sagada or the tribe there preserves deaths with the villagers in their place. So they have their a unique way of burial ceremony, which they used floating coffins, which are hung in the limestones or in caves, because how documents or documentary series explained is that their soil there is not that strong compared to the limestones in their mountains or in their caves. So that's why it is much better to have them buried or have them preserved there, as they have this notion or they have this tradition of theirs that if they're going to do that, the spirits of their ancestors is still present or still communes with the villagers still living in their place, since this exercise or this tradition is already present 500 years ago. So I don't know if that reflects here, since Philippine poetry really preserves culture as they will reflect it to their writing. And it is still a question, since Marjorie Vasco is not a citizen in Mountain Province, which Sagada is located, since she is living, she is considered as Visaya because she is a Boholanon. It is still a question of identity. I mean, not that big deal, but it is still a question of how Marjorie Vasco plots these words, and how did she arrive in this kind of experiment, and how she explains the preservation of a beauty, a beauty of a place in the Philippines through this poem, as she focused or as she highlights two ways, which is about photography and about writing. So that's all for my interpretation of the poem, and thank you so much.